Today, we're talking about power at work and what it does to your nervous system. The moment when you need to talk to your manager or email someone senior or bring up a concern, question, or mistake. Your chest tightens, your thoughts race. You think, I don't want to look incompetent. I don't want to say the wrong thing. What if this reflects poorly on me? So you over-explain, you rehearse, you delay the conversation, or you say nothing at all. What most advice gets wrong is this: the barrier isn't the lack of professional confidence. It's an internal system trying to protect you from the perceived risk of authority and evaluation. Today, we're using our framework to understand why power triggers panic and how to communicate clearly and confidently without freezing or overperforming. Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real-life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together. One example that I have of a time in my life where I have really felt this or experienced this or had to kind of navigate this is going from an independent contractor to an employee of the same company that I was contracting in, like as an independent contractor in relation to therapy or any kind of therapeutic service or healthcare service. There's a lot more freedom in learning how to, or I don't even want to say learning how to, but there's a lot more freedom in being able to provide your services in the way that I guess are just much more liberating. And when you, and of course you're signing, a contract and you're obligated by contractual duties. But when you go from that freedom space, or what I experienced as like much more of a freedom and collaborative space, to now working underneath someone, it poses different challenges, especially when you're used to working a certain way or working in a certain way in a certain space, and maybe coming in as an expertise and as an expert and being relied on your expertise because you signed the contract and they sought you out for your expertise. And now you're moving into a space where these same people might be an authority figure. That was really hard for me to navigate at one point in my life. And I remember thinking, oh, this creates a very different dynamic, but it also helped to expose some of the fears I think I was experiencing going from that freedom to now being evaluated regularly, consistently, and also having a different set of peers. As an independent contractor, I was literally working, it was me and one other person. And we were both doing very different jobs. And so our interaction and our contact was less frequent than some of the contact I was now going to have with other colleagues and employees and others whose work built upon the work that I was doing. So there was just a lot more at stake, and I felt that shift in my space as I moved from like independent contractor to now employee. It was a very interesting, like, I don't know, like a very interesting dynamic to have to navigate, one that I hadn't experienced ever before.
I would encourage everyone listening to just really be open as we're talking about this because our relationships change all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a project you're working on, or as in Rosemary's example, it's a shift in position. And so then there's really a major like power shift of like you're accountable to these people in a different way. But we are really navigating these power shifts all the time in
Mm-hmm.
little ways and in large ways. And so I think this is a really applicable episode for everyone because this is just the nature of our lives as we grow and progress and transition. We are constantly changing as to who's reporting to who and on what project and in what form. So let's get into our frame. Oh, you have more.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about this in terms of relationship, just how you navigate even like a marriage. There are times when, right, like your relationship may change due to internal forces, external forces, or
Absolutely.
just shifts in your family pattern, family dynamics,
Mhm.
family members, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
applicable in many situations. And so,
Well, in your relationships with children, as they grow
yeah,
and develop, as they become adults,
yeah.
like the power shift does change when
Mhm.
like, you bring in a new family member. Like,
Mhm.
there are just, this is something that's extremely applicable, even though we don't really want to say like these power shifts and things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, absolutely. So, the first step in helping us to kind of navigate this is to get clear about our goal. What is our goal? What do I really want? And in this situation, it's common to think like I want to talk to my managers without panicking about this new role that I have and whether or not I'm performing the way that I should be or I think I should be. I also want to be clear and concise. I want to ask questions without fear. I want to raise concerns professionally. And again, when the relationship changes, the way that you might approach asking questions might be different. As an independent contractor, I think uh, I feel a lot more confident in speaking very naturally, how I would, addressing concerns very naturally, and they're still professional. But when you switch into a situation where now you've got some people in the room who carry some authority, the way that you raise a concern might sound different. And so it's not necessarily that the goal is to impress. I think for me, in especially in that situation, is I want to be clear still. I still want to be myself, but I also
Yeah.
want to make sure that I'm feeling grounded in that communication because I am now worried about these dynamics and these power shifts
Right.
that didn't exist at one point.
Right. I'm even thinking about a situation that I'm in within my church. I was like the leader of an organization, and that has ended. And now I'm in a supportive role in the organization. I'm thinking about like that power shift. And even within like my family, having adult children now, that shift, like how I would address a question is very different and all these things, but this getting clear on the communication, what do I actually want to have happen, right? Like, I want to be a supportive person. I want to have open communication. Like, being so clear on what you want to have happen is what can move you forward. And so this first step is just, it's magic. It's really magic. All right, so you're the next step, current actions. What are you doing or not doing to support or not support your current communication goal? So you might over-explain or justify yourself. You might apologize excessively, avoid initiating conversations, delay sharing issues, rehearse excessively. These aren't flaws, they are protection strategies that you should get curious about.
The next step is to identify what you're afraid might happen. As I'm thinking about this situation, I am always thinking about whether or not I'm going to look competent. So I'll look incompetent, I'll damage my reputation. In this particular situation, there were very few of us within the community who could do the things that I was doing, and that was more of a result of language than anything else, language and education than anything else. I will be judged, I'll be seen as difficult to work with. These were all like very, very real, actual concerns that I had. And it's much more high stakes at this point when you are working with so many more people. And it's like, it was weird because this position was like an elevation or like a raise, but not really, but kind of. And so in some ways it did feel a little bit more high stakes, and in other ways it didn't. So yeah, it was really, there were aspects about it that were much more high stakes than they used to be. That's a better way of phrasing that. And I
That's
didn't realize that that was going to be something that I was going to encounter.
Yeah, that's so when you start thinking about the worries and you're explaining those things, I'm like, that's that being clear on like what type of employee do you want to be? Being in alignment with your values, it brings clarity to your worries and it brings insight into everything. And so being able to step out of this and just be like, what do I want to accomplish? What am I doing? What am I not doing? Just being really honest about it. And then, okay, now what am I actually worrying? And into this next step, what are my hidden commitments? What am I committed to underneath? I'm committed to approval. I'm committed to staying safe. I'm committed to not making mistakes. I'm committed to protecting my image. These commitments make sense, and they also often increase our anxiety.
If I look back at that situation, there are a lot of assumptions that I know I was definitely making, right?
Mhm.
Which leads us into the next step. What must you be assuming? And some of those assumptions were based on previous experiences. There were only two, well, there was only, let's see, maybe there were, it was like one and a half other people that looked like me. And by half, I mean, someone who looked like me was a woman of color, but we weren't in the same position, but we often worked in the same team. And so I think there were a lot of assumptions that I was making about what was expected of me as another woman of color. I need to perform perfectly, or that my managers expected perfection, that I shouldn't need help. Definitely felt like one mistake could define me, especially since this was new. And when you have so many people who are part of your team now, or whose work may be dependent on your work, and vice versa, I guess interdependent on your work and vice versa, one mistake really did feel like it could define me because it could impact the work of others. So for me, some of these assumptions felt really true and they are testable, which is great.
Right?
Yeah.
It is that being able to test our assumptions is really powerful and kind of exciting. Instead of waiting to feel calm and feel really good about everything, let's experiment, right? Let's test these assumptions. Experiment number two, separate facts from feelings. State the facts clearly before interpretation. Experiment number three, ask for direction, not permission. I see two options. Do you have a preference? And experiment four, pause instead of over explaining. Say your point, stop, and let it land.
And after all of that, collect your data and reflect. What actually happened? Did clarity help or did it hurt? Did the conversation go as badly as you feared? Did your manager respond with guidance rather than judgment? I will say I had a really gracious manager who was sometimes helpful, sometimes not. But that wasn't a result of any of what we're talking about. That was just a personality issue, and it was easier to have subsequent conversations because I was able to kind of gather that data and recognize that, oh, actually, like, the expectation is not to be perfect. The expectation is that this is a new position for me and that I would be asking for help and guidance. And so in those situations, like, letting the evidence shape your future communication versus your anxiety, that can be really, really helpful in creating and setting a precedent for next time, both for yourself and creating confidence in being able to speak in this way or even address certain issues, and also for others around you. It creates an expectation that, I don't even know if I want to say an expectation, but an experience that people know that they can rely on you when there is a problem to communicate it in a way that is professional or in a way that is clear or in a way that asks for help. And so this week, your assignment is to notice one interaction with someone in authority that triggers your anxiety. Name that worry internally. Identify the commitment beneath it. Choose one experiment and collect your data. Communicate once without overperforming. And remember that the authority doesn't require self-erasure. Just because we have those in positions of authority doesn't mean that we erase ourselves, who we are, and our potential. That clarity that we're bringing to the table is not disrespect. And also that we're allowed to ask for guidance. The confidence that we need to be as successful as we can or as successful as our potential allows grows through practice, not through perfection.
Anxiety around authority really does not mean that you are unqualified. It really means you care and your system is trying to protect you. The barrier isn't a lack of confidence, it's an internal system reacting to power as threat instead of information. So slow down, say less, and trust yourself. That's how you navigate power without panic. Leave us a review and connect with us on Facebook at Communication Skills for Working Women. Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.
When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.